You've seen it on TV, right? Some cybersecurity genius starts typing like a maniac, and boom, the case is solved in 2 minutes. Well, the reality of digital forensics is a little less Hollywood and a lot more meticulous. It's a real science. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain and follow the actual investigator's journey, from the moment they arrive at a digital crime scene to the hidden clues that get left behind.
Just like in medicine, the number one rule in any digital investigation is first, do no harm. And here's the challenge. Just looking at digital evidence can change it. Seriously. Every single click, every command you run, it can alter timestamps, overwrite data, and basically contaminate the entire scene.
So, let's put you in the investigator's shoes. A computer has just been seized as evidence in a major case. It's sitting there on the table. What is the absolute first, most critical thing you have to do? The golden rule is to change absolutely nothing on the original device. This whole idea is called forensic sounding, because if you alter the data in any way, that evidence could get thrown right out of court. Your whole case, it could just collapse. So how on earth do they manage to do that? Well, it all starts with one critical choice. How are you going to collect the data? The method an investigator picks right at the beginning can literally determine what evidence they find and what might get lost for good. Okay, so you've basically got two main paths. The classic approach is called a dead acquisition. You power the machine down. It's the simplest, safest way to make sure you don't change a thing. But, and this is a huge but, what if the computer is encrypted? The decryption key might only exist in the computer's temporary memory. And if you pull the plug, that key is gone. That's when you need a live acquisition, where you collect the data while the system is still running. All right, let's dig into that classic powered-off method first. This is really the bedrock technique of digital forensics. It's designed for one purpose and one purpose only: to create a perfect, legally defensible copy of the evidence. This process just shows you the sheer discipline involved. The investigator literally takes the hard drive out, they connect it to a special device called a write blocker that makes it impossible to change anything. Only then do they create what's called a forensic image, an exact byte-for-byte clone. The original drive gets documented, sealed away, and all the analysis, all the digging happens on that safe copy. And hey, this isn't just some textbook theory. Investigators carry these flyaway kits with them out in the field. These things are packed with all the specialized hardware they need, especially that all-important write blocker, to make sure evidence is collected properly from the very first moment. So what exactly is a write blocker? Well, think of it as a one-way street for data. Its internal programming physically blocks any command that would even try to write or change data on that evidence drive. It's the digital version of sealing a gun in an evidence bag. You can look, but you absolutely cannot touch. But what happens when pulling the plug is the absolute worst thing you can do? Modern technology, especially something like full disk encryption, has created a massive dilemma for investigators. And here's why it's such a big deal. When a computer that's encrypted with something like BitLocker is up and running, the key to unlock everything is sitting right there in its volatile memory, the RAM. The second you cut the power, poof, that key vanishes forever. And all that data becomes a useless, unreadable block of gibberish. Your evidence is locked away, and maybe for good. Now, let's talk about a totally different problem: scale. In one real-world data breach, investigators were dealing with a corporate network of over 160,000 different systems. After a ton of painstaking work using live analysis tools, they found something shocking. Out of all those thousands of machines, the attacker only actually touched about 80 of them. Just 80. And that right there shows you the problem of scale. Can you imagine trying to create a full forensic image of 160,000 computers? It would be impossible. It would take years, an insane amount of resources. Live data collection lets investigators quickly triage the situation, find those 80 compromised machines, and focus their efforts where it actually matters. Okay, so once you've collected the data, either live or from a perfect image, the next step is to actually understand it. And to do that, you have to know how data is structured on a disk. It's not just a big, chaotic mess of ones and zeros. So here's the basic layout. You have your physical disk, and it's divided into partitions. Inside a partition is a volume, and that volume is formatted with a file system, like NTFS, which is what Windows uses. This is the logical structure the operating system uses to keep everything organized. Right at the very start of the disk, there's a critical little section called the Master Boot Record, or MBR. You can pretty much think of it as the table of contents for the entire drive. It tells the computer where each of those partitions starts and stops. Without it, the disk is just an unreadable brick. Now let's get down to the absolute smallest building block. A disk is physically divided into these tiny sections called sectors. A sector is the smallest chunk of space the hardware can actually write to, and it's pretty much always 512 bytes. But trying to manage millions of these tiny 512-byte sectors is super inefficient for the operating system. So what it does is it groups them together into something called a cluster. A cluster is the smallest unit of space that the operating system will actually hand out to a file. So you can see it right here. The whole volume is basically just a sea of these clusters. And each one of those clusters is built from a set number of sectors. A lot of the time, it's 8. Now, this simple relationship creates a really fascinating little quirk that investigators love. Okay, this is where it gets really cool. Let's say you save a tiny text file with just one letter in it, just 1 byte of data. Well, the file system can't give it just 1 byte. It has to give it an entire cluster. So your single letter goes into the very beginning of that space, and the rest of the cluster is just left over. That leftover area is called slack space, and it is a goldmine for investigators because it can hold fragments of files that were deleted long ago. This is how they find traces of incriminating documents or messages that a suspect thought they had totally erased. So if the drive is a big city full of all these clusters, how does the operating system know which house belongs to which file? It uses a master index. And on a Windows system, that's called the master file table. The MFT is probably the single most important data structure in the entire investigation. It's like a library's master card catalog. It has an entry for every single thing on that volume, every file, every folder, even an entry for itself. This record keeps track of the file's name, its timestamps, and, most importantly, which specific clusters on the disk actually hold its data. And that brings us to one final, really crucial point. When you delete a file, the system doesn't usually wipe it out. It often just marks that file's entry in the master index as available. The data itself just sits there until something new overwrites it. So if every file, even a deleted one, leaves behind a ghost in that master index, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Is anything on a computer ever truly gone?